Hey, what is up, everyone? Today we got a pretty unique story. It's narrated by Frederick Surrey. Get cozy and watch till the end, guys.
There is a darkness between the stars, not the familiar dark of empty void, not the cold absence of light that stretches between distant suns, but something older, something alive, something watching. And in the immeasurable vastness of a galaxy at war, where 1,000,000 worlds burn and 1,000,000,000,000 souls cry out to an emperor who sits silent upon a golden throne, there exists an order of warriors whose sole purpose is to watch that darkness back. They are the Deathwatch, the shield that slays. The long vigil made manifest in ceramite and adamantium, in sanctified bolt shells and burning promethium. They are the finest warriors the Imperium of man has ever produced, drawn from 100 different Space Marine chapters and bound together by a single, unbreakable oath that the alien shall not prevail. Picture, if you will, as a warrior standing alone in the corridors of a vast space station that orbits a dead world at the edge of known space. His armor is painted the deepest black, so dark it seems to drink the light from the corridor's flickering lumen strips. On his left shoulder gleams a silver skull set within a stylized letter, the badge of the Deathwatch. But on his right shoulder, there is another symbol entirely, one from another life, another chapter, another brotherhood that he has temporarily set aside to serve a greater calling. Perhaps it bears the blood drop and wings of the blood angels, perhaps the lightning bolt of the white scars, perhaps the wolf's head of the space wolves, or the chalice of the Black Templars, or the fist of the Imperial fists. It does not matter which, for in the Deathwatch, but the divisions that separate chapter from chapter, brother from brother, are stripped away. All that remains is the mission, and the mission is always the same. Find the alien, understand the alien, destroy the alien. Tonight, we are going to tell the story of these extraordinary warriors. We are going to trace their origins back to the darkest days of the Imperium's history, when greenskin hordes threatened to overwhelm Holy Terror itself. We are going to walk the silent halls of their watch fortresses, those ancient bastions that orbit forgotten worlds, and stand sentinel over threats that most of the Imperium does not even know exist. We are going to examine the weapons they carry, the oaths they swear, the sacrifices they make, and the terrible secrets they keep. We are going to meet warriors who have given up everything, even their own names, in service to the long vigil. This is the story of the Deathwatch, and it begins, as so many stories in the 41st millennium do, with blood. Let us settle in. Let us dim the lights. Let us speak of warriors in black and the darkness they hold at bay. Before we begin in earnest, take a moment to consider the sheer audacity of the Deathwatch's existence. In a galaxy where the standard response to any alien threat is to throw millions of expendable soldiers at it until one side or the other is annihilated, where the Imperial Guard measures its casualties in percentages of planetary populations, and the Space Marines wage wars that last decades and consume entire star systems, the Deathwatch proposes a radically different approach. Instead of the sledgehammer, they offer the scalpel. Instead of the tidal wave, they offer the precisely placed charge that brings down the dam. Instead of the army, they offer 5 to 10 warriors, handpicked for a single purpose, armed with the most specialized weapons in the Imperium's arsenal, and trusted with the authority to make decisions that will affect the fate of worlds. It is an approach that should not work. 5 or 10 warriors, no matter how skilled, should not be able to make a meaningful difference in a galaxy where wars are fought with armies numbering in the millions. And yet, time and again, across nearly 9,000 years of continuous operations, the Deathwatch has proven that a handful of the right warriors, in the right place, at the right time, with the right intelligence and the right equipment, can accomplish what entire armies cannot. This is the paradox at the heart of the Deathwatch. They are simultaneously the smallest and the most potent military force in the Imperium. They are the fewest in number and the most far-reaching in their impact. They are the most secretive organization in a civilization built upon secrets. and yet their work touches every corner of the galaxy. They are, in short, the best of the best, and understanding what makes them who they are is essential to understanding the Imperium itself. The Imperium of man is a civilization built upon war. From the moment the Emperor of mankind first stepped forth from the shadows of old Earth to unite the fractured remnants of humanity beneath a single banner, war has been the constant companion of every man, woman, and child who draws breath beneath the light of a human star. The Great Crusade, the Horus Heresy, the endless centuries of grinding conflict that followed, all of it has been defined by the desperate struggle for survival against enemies both within and without. But of all the threats that have ever faced the Imperium, none has been so numerous, so varied, so fundamentally alien in its nature as the Xenos, the alien, the other. Creatures born under distant suns, evolved along pathways so different from humanity's own that the very concept of communication, of understanding, of coexistence becomes meaningless in the face of their strangeness. Consider the scope of what we are talking about. In the Milky Way galaxy alone, there are an estimated 400 billion stars. Around many of these stars orbit worlds teeming with life, and on countless millions of those worlds, intelligent species have arisen. A species with their own histories, their own technologies, their own desires, and their own ambitions. Some of these species are ancient beyond reckoning, older than humanity by millions of years, possessing technologies and powers that make the mightiest weapons of the Imperium look like children's toys. Others are younger, faster breeding, more aggressive, spreading across the galaxy like wildfire and consuming everything in their path. The orcs, those brutish green-skinned fungoid creatures whose entire existence revolves around warfare and violence, are everywhere. They infest every corner of the galaxy, from the densest core worlds to the loneliest frontier outposts. Their crude weapons and ramshackle vehicles are laughable individually, but in the countless billions, that they represent a force of destruction that has toppled empires and scoured worlds clean of all other life. The Tyranids, those nightmarish extragalactic predators that travel between the stars in vast living ships, consuming the biological matter of entire worlds to fuel their endless hunger. They are not merely an alien species. They are a force of nature, a galactic extinction event that has already consumed everything in its path across the void between galaxies, and now turns its insatiable appetite upon the Milky Way itself. The Aeldari, both the craft world-dwelling remnants of a once great civilization, and their dark kin, who lurk in the nightmare dimension of the Webway, possess technologies and psychic powers that can reshape reality itself. The Necrons, those ancient machine beings who ruled the galaxy 60 million years before humanity even existed, are awakening from their tomb worlds in ever greater numbers, their impossible technologies defying the very laws of physics. The Toe, those young upstarts from the Eastern Fringe, spread their so-called greater good with honeyed words and plasma rifles in equal measure. And these are merely the species that the Imperium has catalogued and named. Beyond them lie countless thousands more, alien civilizations so obscure, so strange, so dangerous, that even the Inquisition's vast archives contain only fragmentary references to their existence. This is the threat that the Deathwatch was created to face. Not a single enemy, but all of them. Every alien species that has ever cast a covetous eye upon humanity's domain. Every Xenos abomination that lurks in the darkness between the stars. Every alien intelligence that plots the downfall of the Imperium, whether through open warfare, subtle infiltration, or the patient corruption of humanity's own institutions. And the threats do not simply come from the species we have named. Beyond the well-known foes of the Imperium lie thousands of lesser-known, but no less dangerous alien civilizations. The Hrud, whose temporal fields cause everything around them to age and decay at an accelerated rate. The Rak Gol, savage raiders who augment their bodies with cybernetic implants and attack Imperial shipping lanes with a ferocity that rivals the Drukhari. The Slouth, those maggot-like horrors from beyond known space who infiltrate human societies and harvest living humans for purposes too terrible to contemplate. As the Umbra, creatures of living shadow that can phase in and out of material reality. The Kuorl, the Fraal, the Krav, and dozens more, each representing a unique threat that requires a unique response. The Imperium's conventional military forces, the Imperial Guard with its billions of soldiers, and the Space Marine chapters with their 1,000-strong brotherhoods, are designed to fight wars of attrition, to hold battle lines and advance across open terrain, to besiege fortresses and defend strategic positions. They are magnificent instruments of conventional warfare, but they are blunt instruments, and the alien threat is not always a nail that can be driven home with a hammer. Sometimes the threat is a poison that has infiltrated the water supply of an entire hive city, and sometimes it is a sleeping horror buried beneath the surface of a world that has been colonized for centuries. Sometimes it is a signal broadcast from a derelict ship drifting in the void that slowly rewrites the neural pathways of everyone who hears it. Against such threats, conventional military forces are worse than useless. They are irrelevant. What is needed is something else entirely. Warriors who can think like the aliens they hunt, who understand the alien mind not through sympathy, but through cold, clinical analysis, who possess the specialized knowledge and the specialized tools to identify, locate, and neutralize threats that most of the Imperium does not even know exist. It is, by any rational measure, an impossible task. And yet the Deathwatch has been performing it for nearly 9,000 years. To understand how they do it, and why they do it, we need to go back to the beginning. We need to return to one of the darkest chapters in the Imperium's long and blood-soaked history, to a time when the very survival of humanity hung by a thread, and the greatest threat came not from the forces of chaos, not from traitor legions or heretic cults, but from the most unlikely of enemies. We need to talk about the orcs, and we need to talk about the beast. The War of the Beast, a crucible of desperation. The 32nd millennium was supposed to be a time of renewal. The catastrophic civil war of the Horus heresy was over. The traitor legions had been driven into the eye of terror. The loyal Space Marine legions had been broken down into smaller chapters in accordance with the Codex Astartes. The great organizational treatise penned by the Primarch Robut Guilliman before he fell to the poisoned blade of Fulgrim and was placed in stasis on the world of Macragge. The Imperium was rebuilding, slowly, painfully, but rebuilding nonetheless. Scholars of the era would later call this period the time of rebirth, and for a few precious centuries, it seemed as though the worst might truly be behind humanity. They were wrong. In 544 of the 32nd millennium, the Imperium received the first reports of a greenskin invasion on a scale not seen since the legendary Ulanor Crusade that the Emperor himself had led during the Great Crusade era. But this was no ordinary gathering of orc clans. This was something unprecedented, something that defied everything the Imperium thought it knew about the greenskin species. An orc warlord had arisen, and a creature of such staggering intelligence, such terrifying power, that the greenskins who followed it had been transformed from their usual state of anarchic violence into something approaching a disciplined military force. This warlord was known only as the Beast, and under its leadership, the orcs did something that no one had believed possible. They built a civilization. Think about that for a moment, because it is truly extraordinary. The orcs, a species that the Imperium had long dismissed as little more than savage barbarians, incapable of sustained organized behavior, had produced a leader who could unite billions of greenskins under a single banner and direct their collective energy not just into warfare, but into construction, into industry, thus into the development of technologies that the Imperium's own tech priests could not comprehend. The orc worlds that the Imperium's scouts discovered were not the usual filth-ridden scrap heaps that greenskins typically inhabited. They were organized. They had infrastructure. They had industry on a scale that rivaled the forge worlds of the Adeptus Mechanicus. And they had weapons, terrible weapons, technologies that the Imperium's tech priests could not explain, including massive constructs known as attack moons, artificial planetoids that could transit through space and lay waste to entire star systems. These attack moons were perhaps the most terrifying weapon the beast had at its disposal. Massive beyond comprehension, armored beyond penetration, and each one was a mobile fortress capable of devastating an entire world's defenses and deploying millions of orc warriors directly onto the planet's surface. They were not merely weapons of war. They were statements of intent. Visible proof that the Greenskins had achieved a level of technological sophistication that the Imperium had always assumed was beyond them. The invasion struck with overwhelming force. World after world fell to the green tide. Imperial armies that had been considered invincible were swept aside like leaves in a hurricane. And then, the unthinkable happened. An attack moon appeared in the skies above Terra itself, the throne world of humanity, the seat of the Golden Throne, the most heavily defended world in the entire galaxy. The Greenskins had come to the very heart of the Imperium, and there was no one strong enough to stop them. It was in this moment of absolute crisis that a single man stepped forward to take command of the Imperium's defense. His name was Corland, and he was the chapter master of the Imperial Fists, or rather, what was left of them. The Imperial Fists had been virtually annihilated during the early stages of the war, their forces destroyed on the world of Ardamantua by an enemy they had not been prepared to face. Corland was the sole surviving captain of the chapter, and through a desperate invocation of an ancient protocol created by Rogel Dawn himself, the Last Wall Protocol, he rallied the Imperial Fists' successor chapters, the Black Templars, the Crimson Fists, the Fists Exemplar, the Iron Knights, and the Excoriators, to reunite as a single fighting force for the defense of Terra. But Corland was elevated to the rank of Lord Commander of the Imperium, the highest military authority beneath the Emperor himself. And it was in this capacity, with the fate of all humanity resting upon his shoulders, that he conceived an idea that would reshape the Imperium's approach to the alien threat for the next 9 millennia. Corland recognized something that the other commanders of the Imperial forces had failed to grasp. The traditional approach to warfare, massed formations of Imperial Guard regiments supported by full-strength Space Marine chapters, was not going to work against the beast. The orcs were too numerous, too well organized, too technologically advanced. The Imperium could not match them in a straight fight, not anymore. What was needed, Corland reasoned, was a different kind of warfare. Small, elite teams of Space Marines drawn from multiple chapters, each bringing unique skills and specializations to the table, operating independently behind enemy lines with the freedom to strike at critical targets, without the bureaucratic delays and organizational constraints that hampered conventional military operations. Kill teams, he called them. Surgical instruments rather than blunt hammers. It was a radical idea, one that flew in the face of the Codex Astartes and the established organizational principles that had governed the Space Marines since the end of the heresy. When Corland presented his proposal to the High Lords of Terra, the governing body of the Imperium in the Emperor's absence, he met fierce resistance. The master of the Administratum, Tobris Eckharth, argued that the creation of such a force violated the fundamental principles of the post-heresy Imperium. The Codex Astartes existed specifically to prevent the concentration of Space Marine power that had made the Horus Heresy possible. To create an organization that drew warriors from multiple chapters and operated outside the normal chain of command was, in Eckharth's view, an open invitation to disaster. The Ecclesiarch Mesring went further, declaring the proposal outright blasphemy. The other High Lords were hardly more supportive. In the first vote held by the Senatorum Imperialis on whether to approve the creation of Corland's proposed Xenos hunting force, only a single High Lord voted yes. Draken van Gorich, the Grand Master of the Officio Assassinorum, the Fabricator General Cubic, and the Inquisitorial Representative Veritas abstained. Everyone else voted no. But desperation has a way of changing minds. As the war ground on and the casualties mounted, as attack moons continued to appear over Imperial worlds, and the beast's forces pushed ever deeper into the heart of the Imperium, the opposition to Corland's proposal crumbled. The High Lords realized that they were facing extinction, and that conventional approaches had failed. They gave their reluctant approval, and the seeds of the Deathwatch were sown. The original recruits for this new force were drawn from the survivors of the various Space Marine chapters that had taken part in the initial invasion of the beast's capital world of Ulanor. These chapters had suffered catastrophic losses during the assault, and the warriors who returned were haunted by the faces of the brothers they had lost. In a gesture of mourning and defiance, they repainted their battle plate a somber black, standing vigil over their fallen brethren. Thus, in grief and determination, the Deathwatch was born. Their first mission was nothing less than the salvation of Terra itself. A Deathwatch kill team successfully teleported aboard the attack moon that threatened the throne world, striking at its heart while the Imperial Navy desperately held the line against the Orc fleet. The details of what happened aboard that attack moon are lost to the ravages of time and the secrecy that shrouds all Deathwatch operations, but the result speaks for itself. The attack moon was destroyed, Terra was saved, and the Deathwatch had proven its worth in the most dramatic fashion imaginable. But Corland knew that the Deathwatch would need more than just military success to survive as an institution. The political forces that had initially opposed its creation were still powerful, and without a permanent organizational structure, the Deathwatch would be disbanded the moment the immediate crisis passed. To ensure its survival, Corland reached a power-sharing agreement with the Inquisitorial Representative Wienand. The agreement was elegant in its simplicity. The Deathwatch would fall under the purview of the Inquisition, giving it the institutional protection of the most powerful organization in the Imperium outside of the Adeptus Astartes themselves. But an Astartes would always serve as the force's commanding officer. The first chapter, Master of the Deathwatch, granted the title of Watch Commander, was Asker Warfist, a Wolf Lord of the Space Wolves chapter. Warfist was a fierce and determined warrior who had distinguished himself during the defense of the industrial moon of Fabric, and had reluctantly tolerated fighting alongside Dark Angels, warriors from a chapter with whom the Space Wolves shared an ancient and bitter rivalry in the name of the greater mission. It was fitting, perhaps, that the first leader of an organization built upon the principle of setting aside chapter rivalries in service to a common cause was a warrior who had personally experienced the difficulty and the necessity of doing exactly that. Warfist fought alongside Corland during the second invasion of Ulanor, where the Lord Commander fell in battle against a second beast-class warboss that revealed itself, proving that the Orc threat was even greater than anyone had imagined. During the third and final Imperial offensive on Ulanor, Warfist commanded one of the 5 Imperial attack groups, leading the Deathwatch into the heart of the Greenskin Empire and helping to bring about the final destruction of the beast. The War of the Beast left deep scars upon the Imperium. Entire chapters had been devastated. The Imperial fists themselves had been functionally destroyed and had to be rebuilt by their successor chapters under the leadership of Maximus Thane, the chapter master of the Fists Exemplar. The political landscape of the Imperium had been fundamentally altered, with the Inquisition itself being formally divided into its first 2 major orders, the Ordo Malleus, dedicated to combating the demonic threat, and the Ordo Xenos, dedicated to combating the alien menace. The Deathwatch was chosen to serve as the chamber militant of this newly created Ordo Xenos, just as the Grey Knights served the Ordo Malleus. It was an arrangement that would endure for millennia, binding the Deathwatch to the Inquisition in a partnership that was sometimes uneasy, sometimes fractious, but always always dedicated to the same ultimate goal: the survival of the human species against the alien hordes that pressed in on all sides. And so, from the ashes of the worst orc invasion in the Imperium's history, from the grief of brothers mourning brothers lost, from the desperate ingenuity of a lone chapter master who saw that the old ways were no longer sufficient, the Deathwatch was born. Not as a conventional Space Marine chapter, but as something entirely new, a brotherhood that transcended the boundaries of individual chapters, a force dedicated not to the glory of any single lineage or primarch, but to the defense of all humanity against the alien threat. It was, by any measure, a remarkable achievement. And it was only the beginning. The dual origins, whispers of the Apocryphon conclave. But the story of the Deathwatch's founding is not so simple as a single act of creation during a single crisis. Like so many things in the Imperium of man, the true history of the Deathwatch is shrouded in layers of secrecy, contradiction, and deliberate obfuscation. There exists another account of the Deathwatch's origins, one that predates the War of the Beast and places the organization's founding in a very different context. This account speaks not of a military emergency, but of a deliberate, long-term strategic vision, a plan conceived not by Space Marines, but by the most secretive and powerful branch of the Imperial Inquisition. According to this alternative history, centuries before the War of the Beast, a conclave of Inquisitor lords gathered on a world called Orphite 4. They called themselves the Apocryphon Conclave, and they had been drawn together by a shared conviction that the alien threat to humanity was far greater and far more imminent than the rest of the Imperium realized. These were not ordinary inquisitors. They were the masters of their craft, men and women who had spent lifetimes studying the alien species that inhabited the galaxy and had come to a terrifying conclusion. They foresaw an age when every alien life form in the galaxy, and others from beyond it, might rise up simultaneously, overwhelming the Imperium's defenses and bringing about the extinction of the human species. They had no idea when this apocalyptic event might occur, but they were certain, with the absolute conviction that only decades of first-hand experience with the alien mind could provide, that it was inevitable. The conclave sat for many years, debating strategies and philosophies. Some of the Inquisitor lords advocated for the total annihilation of all Xenos species, as arguing that no alien could ever be trusted and that the only guarantee of humanity's survival lay in the complete sterilization of every non-human world in the galaxy. Others took a more nuanced view, suggesting that certain less violent alien civilizations might be tolerated, at least temporarily, as potential allies against more dangerous threats. But despite their disagreements on the specifics, the members of the Apocryphon Conclave were united on one fundamental point. The Imperium needed a dedicated, specialized force of warriors whose sole purpose was to study, contain, and ultimately destroy the Xenos threat. Not an ad hoc collection of whatever military forces happened to be available, but a permanent, professional organization with the resources, the training, and the authority to take the fight to the aliens on a galactic scale. When the Conclave had finally reached a consensus, they requested an audience with the chapter masters of the Adeptus Astartes. It was a bold move, for the relationship between the Inquisition and the Space Marine chapters has always been complex and sometimes adversarial. The Astartes are proud warriors who answer to their own traditions and their own chain of command, and they do not take kindly to outsiders telling them how to wage war. But the Inquisitor lords of the Apocryphon Conclave were persuasive. They laid out their case with the thoroughness of scholars and the passion of visionaries, painting a picture of a future so dark and so terrible that even the most independent-minded chapter master could not dismiss it out of hand. And when they had finished speaking, the assembled chapter masters withdrew to deliberate. They deliberated for only a single night. When they returned, they delivered their verdict. They would join the Inquisitors in a solemn oath to create a new kind of Space Marine force, one drawn entirely from battle brothers contributed by existing chapters. The alliance was given a name that reflected its purpose: the Deathwatch. for it would stand guard against the doom that the Conclave had foreseen. So, which account is true? Did the Deathwatch begin as Khorlan's desperate improvisation during the War of the Beast, or as the Apocryphon Conclave's carefully planned response to a prophesied alien apocalypse? The honest answer is that we do not know. The intensely secret nature of both the Inquisition and the Deathwatch means that definitive records are scarce, and the Deathwatch's own vow of silence regarding its operations means that even its members may not know the full truth of their organization's history. It is entirely possible that both accounts are accurate, that the Apocryphon Conclave laid the philosophical and political groundwork for the Deathwatch long before the War of the Beast, and that Khorlan's actions during that crisis provided the practical impetus and organizational structure that transformed a theoretical concept into a functioning military force. It is also possible that the Apocryphon Conclave account is a piece of inquisitorial mythology, as a retcon designed to give the Deathwatch a more dignified origin story than "we made it up on the fly" because the orcs were about to destroy Terra. What matters, in the end, is not which origin story is more historically accurate, but what both stories reveal about the fundamental nature of the Deathwatch. Whether born from crisis or from prophecy, the Deathwatch represents something unique in the Imperium's military structure, a recognition that the alien threat cannot be met by brute force alone, that it requires specialized knowledge, dedicated resources, and warriors who are willing to set aside their individual chapter identities in service to a common cause. This is what makes the Deathwatch different from every other Space Marine chapter. A Blood Angel fights for the honor of Sanguinius and the memory of Baal, as an Ultramarine fights for the legacy of Guilliman and the principles of the Codex Astartes. A Space Wolf fights for the glory of Russ and the bonds of the Pack. But a Deathwatch battle brother fights for something larger than any single chapter's traditions or any single Primarch's legacy. He fights for humanity itself, against every alien species that would see it destroyed. It is a noble calling. It is also a lonely one. And understanding that loneliness, that sense of separation from everything a Space Marine once held dear, is essential to understanding what the Deathwatch truly is. The long vigil, oaths, service, and the bonds of brotherhood. To be chosen for the Deathwatch is considered one of the greatest honors that any Space Marine can receive. It is a recognition not merely of martial prowess, though that is certainly a prerequisite, but of a deeper quality, a capacity for adaptability, for independent thought, for the kind of tactical creativity that conventional Codex warfare does not always demand. Each Space Marine chapter that has sworn the ancient oaths of service to the Deathwatch is obligated to periodically select members from among its most experienced veterans and make them available for secondment. These are not raw recruits or junior battle brothers. They are warriors who have already proven themselves across dozens, sometimes hundreds, of campaigns. They have killed orcs and demons and heretics. They have led charges across the killing grounds of 100 worlds. They have earned the respect of their peers and the trust of their commanders, and now they are being asked to leave all of that behind. The process of joining the Deathwatch begins with a ceremony of departure within the warrior's home chapter. The specifics vary from chapter to chapter, reflecting the diverse traditions and cultures that make up the Adeptus Astartes. But the emotional core is always the same. A battle brother who has spent decades, sometimes centuries, fighting alongside his closest companions, sharing the bonds of brotherhood that are forged in the crucible of war, must now say farewell to everything he has known and step into the unknown. He will repaint his armor. The proud colors of his chapter, whatever they may be, will be covered over with the deepest black. Only one shoulder pad will retain its original heraldry, a reminder of who he was before, a link to the brotherhood he has temporarily set aside. On the other shoulder, the silver skull of the Deathwatch will be affixed, marking him as a member of the Long Vigil. It is called the Long Vigil for good reason. The duration of a Space Marine service in the Deathwatch is not fixed. Some serve for a single mission and return to their chapters within months. Others serve for years. Some serve for decades, and some serve for so long that when they finally return, if they return at all, the chapter they left behind has changed beyond recognition, its leadership replaced, its traditions evolved, its very identity subtly altered by the passage of time. There are even those who never return at all, not because they fall in battle, though many do, but because the Deathwatch becomes their life, their purpose, their identity. These warriors continue to serve the long vigil until death claims them, and their connection to their original chapter, growing ever more tenuous with each passing year, until the silver skull of the Deathwatch is the only brotherhood they truly know. Upon arriving at a watch fortress, the newly seconded battle brother will swear the apocryphal oath, a solemn vow that binds him to the Deathwatch and its mission. The exact words of this oath are not widely known, for they are shrouded in the same secrecy that surrounds everything the Deathwatch does. But the essence is clear. The battle brother pledges to stand watch against the alien, to hunt the Xenos wherever it may be found, to protect humanity from threats that most of the Imperium does not even know exist, and to keep the secrets of the Deathwatch inviolate, even from his own chapter. This last point is crucial. When a Space Marine returns to his chapter after his service in the Deathwatch, he is bound by an oath of silence. He cannot speak of the missions he undertook, the enemies he fought, the weapons he used, or the horrors he witnessed. He cannot share the intelligence he gathered or the techniques he learned. All of this must remain locked within the vaults of his memory, accessible to no one but himself and the Deathwatch. This enforced secrecy serves a practical purpose. It prevents sensitive information about Xenos capabilities and Imperial countermeasures from falling into the wrong hands, but it also creates a profound sense of isolation. A battle brother who has served in the Deathwatch carries within him knowledge and experiences that he can never share with his brothers. Battles that he fought and won that will never be recorded in his chapter's histories. Sacrifices that he witnessed that will never be commemorated in his chapter's halls of remembrance. He walks among his brothers, knowing things that they cannot imagine, bearing burdens that they cannot share, forever set apart by the secrets he keeps. And yet, despite this isolation, there is a powerful camaraderie within the Deathwatch itself. The warriors who serve together in kill teams forge bonds that are, in some ways, even deeper than those of conventional chapter brotherhood. This is because Deathwatch kill teams are composed of warriors from many different chapters, each bringing not only unique skills and specializations, but also vastly different cultural backgrounds, fighting styles, and philosophical perspectives. Consider the dynamics of a typical kill team. You might have an ultramarine trained in the precise, methodical warfare of the Codex Astartes, fighting alongside a space wolf whose approach to combat is instinctive, ferocious, and deeply personal. Beside them stands a dark angel, whose secretive nature and rigid discipline create an aura of mystery that even his teammates cannot penetrate, and a salamander, whose compassion for civilian life sometimes conflicts with the hard tactical realities of the Deathwatch's mission. Add a blood angel, fighting a constant internal battle against the genetic flaw that threatens to consume his mind, and a Black Templar, whose zealous hatred of the alien burns with an intensity that borders on the fanatical, and you have a unit that should, by all rights, tear itself apart within hours. But they do not. Because the Deathwatch has spent millennia developing methods for welding these disparate warriors into cohesive fighting units. The training regimens at watch fortresses are specifically designed to force battle brothers from different chapters to work together, to learn each other's strengths and compensate for each other's weaknesses, to develop the kind of mutual trust and understanding that allows a kill team to function as a single, deadly organism rather than a collection of individuals. The process is not always smooth. Long-standing rivalries between chapters can flare up at inopportune moments. A space wolf might clash with a dark angel, echoing the ancient feud between their primarchs, Lehman Russ and Lionel Johnson. An Imperial fist might debate tactics endlessly with an ultramarine, each convinced that their chapter's interpretation of the Codex is the correct one. A blood angel might find his hunger rising at the worst possible moment and a Black Templar might decide that the only appropriate response to a Xenos threat is a headlong charge into the teeth of the enemy. But these conflicts, when they occur, are usually resolved quickly because the warriors of the Deathwatch share something that transcends chapter loyalty. They share a mission. They share the certain knowledge that the alien threats they face are so dangerous, so overwhelming, that anything less than perfect cooperation will result in failure and death.
Now, I just want to take a quick moment here to just share my personal take on the Deathwatch, because honestly, out of everything in 40k lore, these guys might be my favorite concept in the entire setting. The idea that warriors from completely different chapters, warriors who might genuinely dislike each other under normal circumstances, have to put all of that aside and work together against something bigger than any of them, that hits different. It feels real. And I think the reason the Deathwatch resonates with so many of us in the community is because it strips away all the pageantry and all the rivalry and gets down to the core of what Space Marines are. They're humanity's defenders. Full stop. No ego, no glory. But anyways, that's just my take on it. Let's go back to the video.
And they share the experience of having been chosen, singled out from among their peers as the best of the best, as the warriors most capable of adapting to new challenges and working alongside strangers. In the forge of shared combat experience, these disparate warriors become something greater than the sum of their parts. The Ultramarine learns to value the Space Wolf's instinctive aggression. The Space Wolf learns to appreciate the Ultramarine's methodical planning. The Dark Angel finds that he can trust the Salamander to guard his back, despite knowing nothing of his chapter's secrets. And the Black Templar discovers that his hatred of the alien, when focused and directed by the collective wisdom of the kill team, becomes a weapon far more effective than any blade or bolter. This is the true genius of the Deathwatch. Not its weapons, not its intelligence network, not its watch fortresses or its fleets, but its ability to take the finest warriors from the most diverse military traditions in the galaxy and meld them into killing teams of unmatched effectiveness. It is a feat of organizational brilliance that would be remarkable in any era, and in the grim darkness of the far future, it is nothing short of miraculous. When a Battle Brother's service is complete and he returns to his chapter, he carries with him more than just memories. He carries skills and perspectives that he could never have gained within the confines of his own chapter's traditions. He has learned how other chapters fight, how they think, what they value. He has been exposed to alien technologies and combat doctrines that most Space Marines will never encounter. And he carries on his person a Guardian bolt pistol, and a finely crafted weapon presented to him during his end of vigil ceremony, a tangible reminder of the brotherhood he forged during his service. Some returning veterans are also permitted to retain the silver shoulder pad of the Deathwatch, wearing it alongside their chapter's colors as a mark of honor and distinction that speaks louder than any words ever could. These returning veterans become invaluable assets to their chapters, bringing back knowledge and experience that enriches the entire organization. They become teachers and mentors, passing on what they have learned to the next generation of warriors. And they become potential candidates for future service. For once a Space Marine has served in the Deathwatch, he may be called upon to serve again if the need arises. The long vigil is, in its way, a gift, a terrible, demanding, an isolating gift, but a gift nonetheless. It transforms good warriors into exceptional ones, broadens narrow perspectives into galactic ones, and forges bonds of brotherhood that span the vast distances between chapters that might otherwise never interact. And it ensures that the Imperium's finest warriors are always ready, always watching, always prepared for the moment when the alien darkness rises up to swallow the light. The kill teams, organization, composition, and the art of alien hunting. The fundamental organizational unit of the Deathwatch is not the company or the battle group, as it is in most Space Marine chapters. It is the kill team, a small, specialized squad of warriors typically numbering between 5 and 10 members, each hand-picked for a specific mission and equipped to deal with a specific threat. And this is one of the most important things to understand about the Deathwatch. They are not a standing army. They do not fight in the massed formations that characterize conventional space marine warfare. They do not hold battle lines or conduct large-scale maneuvers across open terrain. Instead, they operate as small, independent units, striking at critical targets with surgical precision, accomplishing objectives that larger forces cannot, and then vanishing before the enemy can mount an effective response. The composition of a kill team is never fixed. No two kill teams are ever exactly the same, because no two missions are ever exactly the same. Yet a kill team that is being sent to eliminate a Genestealer cult infiltrating a hive city will be composed very differently from one that is being deployed to destroy a Tyranid Biotitan on an open battlefield, which will in turn be very different from one that is being dispatched to investigate a newly discovered Necron tomb world. The Watch Captain, or Watch Commander, responsible for assembling a kill team, will consider a wide range of factors when selecting its members. What is the nature of the threat? What kind of environment will the kill team be operating in? What special skills or knowledge will be required? What chapter specializations would be most useful? A mission requiring stealth and infiltration might call for a Raven Guard veteran, whose chapter has perfected the art of guerrilla warfare. At a mission involving close quarters combat in the tight confines of a space hulk might demand the presence of a space wolf or a blood angel, whose savage ferocity in melee is legendary. A mission requiring the careful analysis of alien technology might benefit from an Iron Hands Marine, whose chapter's close relationship with the Adeptus Mechanicus has given them an unmatched understanding of both Imperial and alien machines. Over the centuries, the Deathwatch has developed and codified several standard kill team configurations, each optimized for a particular type of mission. These configurations are taught at every Watch Fortress and form the foundation of Deathwatch tactical doctrine. The Aquila kill team is the most versatile and commonly deployed configuration. It is a balanced force, as typically built around a core of veterans in standard power armor, supplemented by specialists carrying heavy weapons or specialized equipment. The Aquila kill team is designed to be adaptable, capable of handling a wide range of threats and mission types without significant reconfiguration. It is the workhorse of the Deathwatch, the configuration that watch captains turn to when they are not entirely certain what their warriors will be facing in the field. The Furor kill team is a shock assault force, specializing in overwhelming firepower delivered at close range. Named for the tactical methods developed by Squad Viridium during the early campaigns against the remnants of the Beast's greenskin armies in the 32nd Millennium, the Furor configuration typically includes warriors in Terminator armor, whose heavy weapons and nigh-impervious protection make them ideal for breaking through enemy lines and engaging the largest and most dangerous alien threats. Squad Viridium's original techniques involved the delivery of explosive firepower across a wide frontage, concentrating on the tightly packed front ranks of an Orc horde and using each detonation to cause maximum collateral damage, sowing the field with dismembered corpses that slowed the elements behind. These methods proved so devastatingly effective that they are still in widespread use to this day. The Venator kill team is a fast attack and encirclement force, emphasizing speed and maneuverability over raw firepower. Typically equipped with bikes, jump packs, and other high-mobility assets, the Venator configuration is designed for pursuit and harassment, for running down fleeing enemies and cutting off escape routes. It is particularly effective against xenospecies that rely on speed and evasion, such as the Aeldari or certain breeds of Tyranid. The Dominatus kill team is a specialist unit designed to counter elite enemy forces. Where the Furor configuration is optimized for breaking through masses of enemy troops, the Dominatus kill team is tailored to engage the most dangerous individual threats, from the lethally focused Necron Immortals to the arrogant and deadly incubi of the Drukhari. Dominatus Battle Brothers change their armaments with great regularity, equipping themselves before each mission with the weapons best optimized for the specific foe they will face. Deathwatch shotguns and Inferno pistols are deployed for point-blank kill shots, while heavy thunder hammers and power fists ensure that each blow struck is the last one needed. Meanwhile, the finest duelists in the kill team carry thrumming power swords, matching their enemies blade to blade and proving their mastery with every precise strike. The Malleus Kill Team is a heavy assault force designed to destroy the largest and most heavily armored alien threats. Where a Furor Kill Team overwhelms its enemies with volume of fire, a Malleus Kill Team delivers a smaller number of devastatingly powerful blows, using less cannons, multi-melters, and other heavy weapons to punch through armor that would shrug off lesser ordnance. The Malleus configuration is the Deathwatch's answer to alien war machines, monstrous creatures, and fortified positions. The Purgatus Kill Team takes a different approach entirely. Rather than targeting the enemy's frontline troops or their heaviest assets, the Purgatus configuration focuses on eliminating enemy command structures by identifying and destroying the leaders, psychers, synapse creatures, and other coordinating elements of an alien force. A Purgatus Kill Team can cause an entire enemy army to lose cohesion and collapse, achieving through targeted assassination what might otherwise require a full-scale military campaign. And then there are the Farthest Kill Teams, a relatively recent innovation introduced in response to the arrival of Primaris Space Marines in the Deathwatch following the Ultimaris decree of the era Indomitus. These are the Primaris equivalent of Aquila Kill Teams, basing their structure around a core of intercessors and incorporating the new physical capabilities and technological innovations that Archmagos Dominus Belisarius Call's work has made possible. The template of the Farthest Kill Team spread rapidly from one watch fortress to the next, and new tactics and specializations are constantly being experimented with as the Primaris Marines and their capabilities become ever more integral to the Deathwatch's operations. What makes these codified configurations so effective is not their individual compositions, which are ultimately just starting points that can be modified as the situation demands, but the centuries of accumulated experience and tactical wisdom that have gone into their development. And each configuration represents the distilled lessons of thousands of missions conducted against every conceivable type of alien threat, refined and improved with each new engagement, passed down from generation to generation of Deathwatch warriors. A watch captain assembling a kill team does not start from scratch. He starts from a foundation of hard-won knowledge, a vast database of tactical information that tells him exactly what kinds of forces have proven most effective against specific alien threats in specific environments under specific conditions. He then modifies and adapts this template based on the particular characteristics of his current mission, the available personnel, and his own experience and judgment. The result is a force that is both scientifically optimized and creatively flexible, as combining the best of systematic analysis with the intuitive adaptability that only comes from years of combat experience. This is the art of alien hunting, and the Deathwatch has been practicing it for nearly 9,000 years. They are very, very good at it. What makes a Deathwatch kill team so much more effective than a conventional Space Marine squad is not merely the quality of its individual members, though that quality is exceptional. It is the way those individuals interact, the way their different skills and perspectives combine to create something greater than any of them could achieve alone. A standard Space Marine tactical squad consists of warriors who have trained together for decades, who share the same chapter culture, the same tactics, the same way of thinking. This gives them a powerful unity of purpose. But it also limits their flexibility. They can only see problems through the lens of their own chapter's traditions. A Deathwatch kill team, by contrast, sees problems through multiple lenses simultaneously. When an Ultramarine looks at an enemy fortification, he sees a tactical problem to be solved through methodical application of firepower and maneuver. When a Raven Guard looks at the same fortification, he sees a stealth approach through the drainage system on the north side. When a White Scar looks at it, he sees the vulnerability of the supply lines that keep it operational. When an Iron Hand looks at it, he sees the electromagnetic signature of the alien technology within and knows exactly what frequency of disruption will cause it to fail. When all four of these perspectives are brought together in a single planning session, the result is an approach to the problem that is more creative, more comprehensive, and more likely to succeed than anything any one chapter's traditions could produce. The Deathwatch's training programs are specifically designed to cultivate this kind of multi-perspective thinking. At watch fortresses across the galaxy, newly arrived battle brothers are subjected to a demanding program of exercises and simulations that forces them to work alongside warriors from chapters they may never have encountered before. These exercises are deliberately designed to create situations where conventional approaches fail, and unconventional thinking is the only path to success. A battle brother who insists on doing things the way my chapter does them will quickly find himself struggling. Almost while a battle brother who is willing to learn from his teammates and adapt his own approach will thrive. The training is not limited to tactical exercises. Deathwatch battle brothers also receive extensive briefings on the alien species they may encounter, studying everything from their biology and psychology to their weapons, tactics, and cultural practices. A Deathwatch veteran who has completed a full tour of duty at a watch fortress will know more about the Imperium's alien enemies than virtually any other warrior in the Adeptus Astartes, a knowledge base that makes him invaluable not only during his service in the Deathwatch, but also when he returns to his chapter. There is also a spiritual dimension to the training. Our Deathwatch chaplains play a crucial role in helping battle brothers from different chapters navigate the cultural and spiritual differences that can create friction within kill teams. A blood angel who struggles with the red thirst may find understanding from a chaplain who has counseled dozens of blood angels before him. A space wolf who chafes at the Deathwatch's more structured approach to warfare may be guided by a chaplain who knows how to channel the wolf's natural ferocity without suppressing it. The chaplain's role is not to homogenize the kill team, to strip away the individual characteristics that make each chapter unique, but to help each battle brother understand how his chapter's strengths can complement those of his teammates. This process of team building takes time. While a newly formed kill team will often experience a period of adjustment, sometimes marked by friction and misunderstanding, as its members learn to work together. But the results, when the process succeeds, are remarkable. A veteran kill team that has been operating together for months or years develops a level of cohesion and mutual understanding that can be almost uncanny, each member instinctively knowing where the others will be and what they will do in any given situation, anticipating each other's needs and compensating for each other's limitations without the need for verbal communication. It is a bond that transcends chapter affiliation, a brotherhood forged in the fire of shared danger and shared purpose. And it is this bond, more than any weapon or any tactic, that makes the Deathwatch the most effective alien hunting force the galaxy has ever known. The arsenal of the alien hunters. If the Deathwatch's warriors are the finest alien hunters in the galaxy, their weapons and equipment are the tools that make that hunting possible. And what tools they are. The Deathwatch maintains an arsenal that is, in many respects, unmatched anywhere in the Imperium. This is not because they possess more weapons than other Space Marine chapters, though the armories of the major watch fortresses are impressively well stocked, but because they possess different weapons. The Deathwatch has access to technologies and munitions that are found nowhere else in the Imperium's military, specialized tools designed specifically for the unique challenges of combating alien species. At the most fundamental and widely used of these specialized weapons is special issue ammunition. At first glance, the bolter carried by a Deathwatch Marine looks much like the standard bolt weapon carried by any other Space Marine, but the resemblance is superficial. A Deathwatch bolter can be loaded with a variety of highly specialized bolt rounds, each designed to be maximally effective against a specific type of target. Hellfire rounds are designed specifically for use against biological targets, particularly Tyranids. Their cores are filled with a genetically engineered mutagenic acid that reacts with organic tissue in catastrophic fashion, dissolving flesh, bone, and chitin with equal efficiency. A single Hellfire bolt can cause wound channels far out of proportion to its size, making it devastatingly effective against the monstrous bioconstructs that the Tyranid hive fleets deploy. Crack and penetrator rounds are designed for maximum armor-piercing capability. Their elongated, adamantium-tipped darts are propelled by a more powerful charge than standard bolt rounds, giving them the velocity and penetration to punch through the heaviest alien armor. They are the ammunition of choice when facing Necron warriors, Orc mega-armored knobs, or any other heavily protected target that standard bolt rounds cannot reliably damage. Metal Storm frag shells detonate just before impact, spraying the area with a storm of razor-sharp metallic fragments that shred unarmored or lightly armored targets. They are primarily used against hordes of weaker Xenos, as situations where the kill team is facing overwhelming numbers and needs to maximize the damage inflicted by each shot. Stalker silence shells are designed for covert operations, featuring reduced propellant charges and sound-dampening casings that allow them to be fired without the characteristic bark of a standard bolter. They sacrifice some hitting power for stealth, making them ideal for infiltration missions where the kill team needs to eliminate sentries and guards without alerting the wider enemy force. But special issue ammunition is only the beginning. The Deathwatch's arsenal extends far beyond bolt weapons, encompassing a range of exotic and devastating tools of war that would make even a veteran Space Marine's eyes widen. The Deathwatch frag cannon is one of the most feared weapons in the Deathwatch's arsenal. But this short-ranged weapon can operate in two firing modes: a template mode that sprays a wide area with superheated shrapnel, and a focused mode that concentrates its destructive power into a single, armor-piercing shot. At close range, there are few weapons in the Imperium that can match the frag cannon's raw destructive output, and it has become the weapon of choice for kill teams conducting boarding actions or fighting in the close confines of urban environments and space hulks. The Infernus Heavy Bolter is exactly what it sounds like: a heavy bolter with an underslung heavy flamer. It combines the sustained firepower of one of the Imperium's most reliable heavy weapons with the area denial capability of a flamethrower, creating a weapon system that is equally effective against armored targets and unarmored hordes. It is a brutally practical weapon designed for warriors who expect to face multiple threat types in a single engagement and do not want to waste time switching between weapons. The Xenophase blade is perhaps the most mysterious weapon in the Deathwatch's arsenal. These shimmering power swords are based on technology recovered from Necron tomb worlds, specifically the phase swords used by the Necron's own elite warriors. The blade's molecular realignment field allows it to phase partially out of normal spacetime, enabling it to bypass force fields, energy shields, and even the seemingly invulnerable defenses of certain alien species. The technology is so exotic and so poorly understood by the Imperium's own tech priests that the Xenophase blade remains the subject of intense interest from the most radical Xenorite cults of the Adeptus Mechanicus. The Deathwatch, for its part, cares little for the theoretical implications of the technology. They care only that it works, and that it kills aliens that other weapons cannot. The Guardian's Spear is a ceremonial weapon carried by Watchmasters, the highest-ranking officers of the Deathwatch. Modeled after the legendary weapons of the Adeptus Custodes, the Emperor's own personal bodyguard, the Guardian's Spear is both a symbol of the trust implicit in the Watchmaster's role and a devastatingly effective close combat weapon. It incorporates a built-in bolt gun with special issue ammunition, but making it effective at both range and in melee, and its power field is strong enough to cleave through virtually any armor. The fact that the Deathwatch's senior officers carry weapons inspired by those of the Custodes is a deliberate statement of purpose. The Deathwatch considers itself to be, in a very real sense, the guardians of humanity, standing watch over the Imperium in the same way that the Custodes stand watch over the Emperor himself. The Deathwatch shotgun deserves special mention for its versatility. This weapon can fire a variety of specialized shell types, each designed for a specific tactical situation. Crypt-clearer rounds are standard combat shells, effective at medium range against a variety of targets. Xenopurge shells are devastating at close range, designed to punch through alien hides and armor with brutal efficiency. Worm's breath shells create a fan of incendiary material, ignoring cover and setting the target alight. The Deathwatch shotgun may lack the range and raw power of a bolter, but its flexibility makes it a favorite among veterans who value adaptability over specialization. And then there is the Corvus Blackstar, the Deathwatch's own dedicated attack aircraft and dropship. A sleek and deadly craft, far more advanced than the other Imperial aircraft it superficially resembles. The Corvus Blackstar is optimized for alien hunting in a way that no other vehicle in the Imperium's arsenal can match. Its vectored engines make it nimble enough to dart through winding canyons, the elegant star spires of a craft world, or even the guts of a Tyrannid hive ship, out-delivering its cargo of Deathwatch Marines directly to the heart of the enemy. The pilot of each Corvus Blackstar is a veteran Deathwatch Tech Marine who has earned the right to fly it over long and arduous years of training. So intense is this training that the Tech Marine's will and the machine spirit of the aircraft become interlinked, the pilot and the machine functioning as a single entity in much the same way that a Space Marine's armor becomes an extension of his own body. The Blackstar's weapon systems are impressive, typically including a twin-linked assault cannon or twin-linked lascannon, storm strike missiles, or a Blackstar rocket launcher, and a Blackstar cluster launcher that can saturate an area with either frag or incendiary munitions. But the Corvus Blackstar's greatest asset is not its weapons, but its transport capacity. It can carry up to 12 Deathwatch Marines, including those in bulky Terminator armor and even Space Marines mounted on bikes, a feat that no other transport aircraft in the Imperium's arsenal can match. This means that a single Corvus Blackstar can deliver an entire kill team, complete with heavy weapons and specialist equipment, directly into the heart of an alien stronghold, bypassing the outer defenses that would slow or stop a conventional ground assault. The Deathwatch is also freed from the usual technological dogma that constrains the rest of the Imperium. Where other Imperial forces are forbidden from using alien technology on pain of being declared heretics by the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Deathwatch operates under different rules. Their arsenal includes vast amounts of Xenos technology, from Aeldari psychomaterials to Necron artifacts to weapons and devices that have been recovered from species so obscure that even the Ordo Xenos has difficulty classifying them. The Deathwatch does not use this alien technology casually or indiscriminately. Every piece of Xenos equipment undergoes extensive testing and analysis before it is approved for field use, and the Deathwatch maintains a standing vigil against the possibility that alien devices might be booby-trapped, corrupted, or otherwise dangerous to their users. But when a piece of alien technology can give a kill team a decisive advantage against the alien species that created it, the Deathwatch has no compunction about turning the enemy's own tools against them. This willingness to embrace the unorthodox, yet to use whatever weapons and tactics are most effective regardless of whether they conform to traditional Imperial doctrine, is one of the Deathwatch's greatest strengths. It is also one of the things that sometimes puts them at odds with more conservative elements within the Imperium, particularly the Adeptus Mechanicus, whose dogmatic reverence for approved technology sometimes clashes with the Deathwatch's pragmatic approach to arsenal management. But the Deathwatch's results speak for themselves, and in the grim calculus of the far future, results are the only currency that matters. The Watch Fortresses, bastions against the dark. Scattered across the galaxy, in places both known and secret, stand the Watch Fortresses of the Deathwatch. These are not merely military installations. They are sanctuaries and archives, and arsenals and training grounds, repositories of ancient wisdom and guardians of terrible secrets. They are the beating hearts of the Deathwatch's eternal vigil, the places from which kill teams are dispatched and to which they return, the strongholds that anchor the Deathwatch's presence in every corner of the Imperium. Each Watch Fortress is a sovereign domain, standing sentinel over a specific region of the Imperium and reporting to no authority outside the Deathwatch's own chain of command and the Ordo Xenos of the Inquisition. The Watch Commander who presides over a fortress is the absolute master of all the kill teams stationed there, wielding an authority that is, in many ways, comparable to that of a Space Marine chapter master. The fortresses themselves take many forms. Some are mighty deep space void stations and star forts, are artificial constructs of unimaginable scale that orbit dead worlds or patrol the empty spaces between star systems. Others are imposing, fortified keeps maintained on the surface of planets, their walls thick enough to withstand orbital bombardment, and their defenses sophisticated enough to repel any conventional assault. Some are impenetrable installations, constructed many kilometers beneath the ground, hidden from any enemy that might seek to attack them from above. And others still are hollowed-out asteroids, bristling with weaponry and protected by overlapping layers of void shields and point defense systems. What all watch fortresses share, regardless of their physical form, is a common function and a common atmosphere. They are places of preparation and contemplation, where warriors from 100 different chapters come together to train, to plan, to share knowledge, and to forge the bonds of brotherhood that will sustain them in the battles to come. They are also places of secrecy, where the most sensitive intelligence about alien threats is stored and analyzed, and where the most dangerous alien artifacts are kept under conditions of extreme security. At the heart of each fortress is a sealed vault containing the most sensitive and valuable of assets. It is said that some of these vaults are encased within stasis fields, so that time stands still within, and even the most ancient and crumbling parchments can be preserved indefinitely. Other vaults are said to be encased within quantum displacement fields, so that they are not actually located in the watch fortress at all, but exist out of phase with it and the rest of real space. This means that even should the fortress be destroyed, the contents at its heart would survive, drifting in a dimensional pocket that no enemy could reach. What is kept within these vaults depends upon the mission of the fortress and the threats it guards against. Some contain vast libraries of forbidden texts, knowledge so terrible that it may only be consulted when the very fate of humanity hangs in the balance. Others contain caches of xenos and forbidden weaponry known as black vaults, repositories of alien arms and equipment that have been captured, studied, and catalogued over millennia of warfare. The relationship between the watch fortresses and the Ordo Xenos is a complex and sometimes delicate one. In theory, the Deathwatch and the Inquisition are partners, equals working toward a common goal. The Inquisitors of the Ordo Xenos gather intelligence, identify threats, and formulate strategies, while the Deathwatch provides the military muscle to carry those strategies out. In practice, the relationship is often more nuanced. Watch commanders are proud warriors who do not always appreciate being told what to do by Inquisitors who may have vast knowledge of the alien but limited understanding of military operations. Similarly, Inquisitors sometimes find the Deathwatch's independent streak frustrating, particularly when kill teams exercise their own judgment about how best to accomplish a mission rather than following the Inquisitor's instructions to the letter. But for all these occasional tensions, the partnership between the Deathwatch and the Ordo Xenos is one of the most effective collaborative relationships in the Imperium. The Inquisitors provide the intelligence network that allows the Deathwatch to identify threats before they become crises, and the Deathwatch provides the Inquisitors with a military capability that no other force in the Imperium can match. Together, they form a shield against the alien that has held firm for nearly 9,000 years. Sometimes, a Deathwatch kill team is led directly by an Inquisitor, particularly when the mission requires the Inquisitor's personal expertise or authority. In such cases, the Inquisitor's word is law, and the kill team follows their orders with the same discipline they would accord to any watch captain. But in extreme circumstances, a Deathwatch captain or librarian may assume command, particularly if the tactical situation demands a warrior's instincts rather than an investigator's caution. The Deathwatch can requisition anything it requires to complete its objectives: ships, weapons, personnel, even the services of entire Imperial Guard regiments or other Space Marine chapters if the threat warrants it. The capital of the Deathwatch, the fortress that serves as the organization's administrative and spiritual center, is Thalassa Prime, located in the Ultima Segmentum. It is from Thalassa Prime that the most important strategic decisions are made, the most sensitive missions are coordinated, and the most valuable intelligence is disseminated to the other watch fortresses across the galaxy. But perhaps the most famous and most mysterious of all the watch fortresses is Watch Fortress Eriok, a massive Ramillies-class star fort located in the Jericho Reach of the Ultima Segmentum. Eriok is a place of many secrets, and its very existence defies logical explanation. But Eriok is far from the only notable watch fortress in the Deathwatch's network. Scattered across the segmentums of the Imperium, each fortress stands as a bastion against the specific alien threats that menace its region of space. Watcher Keep is a primary watch fortress located on the border between the Segmentum Pacificus and Segmentum Tempestus, currently commanded by the formidable Watchmaster Viedrian Shenol. In the era Indomitus, Shenol has become known for his uncompromising stance against what he perceives as a growing tide of Xenos sympathy within the Imperium. In the wake of the Great Rift's creation, some humans have begun to argue that since alien species are also threatened by the forces of chaos, the Imperium should consider fighting alongside them against their shared enemy. Shenol considers these people heretics, pure and simple. He has declared that there can be no tolerance, no compromise, and no peace with aliens. Only war and the Imperium's endless purgation of the Xenos threat. This hardline stance has made Watcher Keep a symbol of the Deathwatch's most uncompromising philosophy, and its kill teams are known throughout the region for the absolute ruthlessness with which they pursue their missions. It was at Watcher Keep that Demetrian Titus served his years as the Black Shield, known as Nullus, and it was from Watcher Keep that Kill Team Caesarion deployed to the Residius system during the Fourth Tyrannic War. The fortress's watch company Primus, dispatched alongside forces from Fort Obsidus, played a critical role in blunting the Tyrannid advance through the Bastio subsector, even as the hive fleets threatened to overwhelm the Imperium's western boundaries. Furor Shield is located in the Ultima Segmentum and oversees the Orc and Tyrannid-infested Octarius sector, one of the most dangerous regions of space in the entire galaxy. The Octarius sector is a war zone of almost incomprehensible scale, where the Orcs and the Tyrannids have been locked in a seemingly endless war of escalation that grows more dangerous with each passing year. Or the Orcs grow stronger by fighting, as they always do, and the Tyrannids adapt and evolve with each new battle, consuming the biological matter of the fallen to fuel the creation of ever more deadly bioforms. Furor Shield's kill teams must navigate this nightmare landscape with extreme caution, for both sides of the Octarius War would happily turn their attention to any intruders who ventured too close. Praefects Venatoris is the primary watch fortress tasked with monitoring the Dark Elder webway portals in the Segmentum Obscurus. The Dark Elder, or Drukhari as they are more properly known, are among the most insidious and sadistic alien species in the galaxy, launching lightning raids through their webway portals to kidnap Imperial citizens for unspeakable purposes. Yet the kill teams stationed at Prefects Venatoris specialize in the incredibly difficult art of predicting where and when the next Drukhari raid will strike, and positioning themselves to intercept it before the raiders can escape back into the webway with their captives. Fort Obsidus, located in the Segmentum Solar, is currently commanded by Watchmaster Astoran Kor, who has proven especially adept in the deployment of repulsor battle tanks following the integration of Primaris Marines into the Deathwatch's forces. His innovative use of these new vehicles has led to several significant victories against Orc speed cults that threatened Imperial shipping lanes in his area of responsibility. The Onyx Patrol is perhaps the most unusual entry in the Deathwatch's order of battle. It is not a fixed fortress at all, but a mobile fleet that hunts Eldari craft worlds through the Segmentum Solar. Craft worlds are vast city-sized spacecraft that serve as the home of the surviving Eldari race, and they move through the galaxy according to patterns that Imperial navigators find almost impossible to predict. The Onyx Patrol follows these movements, maintaining a watchful presence in the vicinity of the craft worlds and standing ready to intervene should the Eldari's actions threaten Imperial interests. And then, there is Fortress Omega, a watch fortress with one of the more colorful histories in the Deathwatch's archives. In the 32nd Millennium, Aeldari Corsairs assaulted the fortress, seeking a rune-carved Aeldari artifact called the Doomsday Sphere, which they believed was kept within the fortress's null chamber. What the Corsairs found instead were Venator kill teams lying in ambush. Hundreds of the Xenos raiders died before the last of them reached the chamber, where they discovered that the Doomsday Sphere did not actually exist. It was a myth, deliberately spread by human mercenaries working for Black Shields to lure the Corsairs into a trap. The entire operation was a deception from start to finish, demonstrating that the Deathwatch's arsenal includes not only physical weapons, but also information warfare and psychological operations. Returning to Erioch, this particular fortress is a place of many secrets, and its very existence defies logical explanation. And it is a millennia-old structure situated in a place where no forge master or architect of the Imperium could have traveled, and where no materials for its construction could possibly exist. Naval-minded Inquisition agents who have visited Erioch have noted subtle points of architecture beneath centuries of accumulated restructuring that are reminiscent of a mighty Ramillies-class starfort, leading to the speculation that the entire structure was somehow transported to its current location in some great and secret undertaking in the ancient past. That such a precious commodity should have been risked in transport all the way to distant Erioch and then left essentially unused for centuries speaks volumes about the importance of whatever the fortress was built to protect. Within Erioch, how the Deathwatch's kill teams train and prepare for their missions in conditions of remarkable sophistication. Vast domes can be configured to recreate any environment imaginable, from the scorching deserts of a death world to the frozen wastes of an ice planet, from the cramped corridors of a space hulk to the open savanna of a frontier colony. Some of these domes have been stocked with genuine Deathworld flora and fauna, creating training environments so realistic that they pose actual danger to the warriors who use them. It has even been known for captured aliens to be set loose in the training domes, to be hunted down by kill teams in deadly mission simulation exercises that come as close to real combat as possible without actually crossing the line. Erioch also houses the Xenos Bestiarium, where aliens are kept captive, tested, and categorized by the Apothecaria in hundreds of holding cells and examination rooms. The most dangerous Xenos specimens may be released into the fortress's extensive hunting grounds for the Deathwatch to hone their skills against, allowing Battle Brothers to discover effective weapons and techniques through direct personal experience, rather than merely reading about them in textbooks and reports. The hunting grounds themselves are a marvel of engineering. Watch Captain Praskus established the first crewed training grounds in the asteroid fields around Erioch, but his successors expanded them enormously. Master Jarax of the Black Templars ordered gigantic sealed vessels to be built so that space marines could practice their arts under every conceivable condition of the void, from hard vacuum to the crushing pressure of a gas giant's atmosphere. Watch Captain Madsen caused several vessels to be modified by having ship corridors and Xenos labyrinths painstakingly recreated for the exercise of close assault tactics. And Jarax's Eyrie, a 3,800-meter vertical vessel, has been kept empty for the exercise of zero-gravity and terminal velocity combat techniques. But it is at the heart of Watch Fortress Erioch that the greatest mystery of the Deathwatch resides. A mystery so profound, so ancient, and so carefully guarded that even the highest-ranking officers of the Deathwatch do not fully understand it. The Omega Vault, the last fortress, is truth. At the very center of Watch Fortress Erioch, there is a door. It stands 40 paces high, as sealed and armored by layered void shields and adamantine plating as thick as the prow of a warship. Engraved upon it are the symbols of the Deathwatch and an ancient Terran rune, the symbol Omega, the last letter of a language so old that most of the Imperium has forgotten it ever existed. Surrounding these symbols is an image of the Emperor strangling a coiling serpent, a representation whose precise meaning has been debated by scholars and inquisitors for millennia. Above these great doors, carved in high Gothic, are 5 words that have haunted the dreams of everyone who has ever read them. And the last fortress is truth. This is the entrance to the Omega Vault, and it is perhaps the greatest unsolved mystery in the entire Deathwatch. The Omega Vault is a sealed series of ancient engines, catacombs, and chambers that spans many levels of the Watch Fortress, running through its core like a spine through a body. It has been part of Watch Fortress Erioch since the fortress was first established in the Jericho Reach, but what it contains at its center remains unknown to any now living. The vault itself is a broadly cylindrical structure, and its construction predates the Deathwatch itself by an unknown but presumably vast amount of time. What makes the Omega Vault so extraordinary and so disturbing is that it has a mind of its own. No living creature can open its doors. No technology available to the Imperium, not the most powerful cutting tools, not the most devastating weapons, not even the focused might of an orbital bombardment can breach its defenses. The vault opens when it chooses to open, and it closes when it chooses to close. There is no known mechanism by which its actions can be predicted or controlled, and yet, the Omega Vault is not random in its behavior. Over the millennia, a pattern has emerged. The vault appears to respond to events unfolding within the Jericho Reach, opening itself to reveal artifacts, information, and resources that are directly relevant to the crises that the Deathwatch is currently facing. It is as if the vault was designed by some intelligence of unimaginable foresight to provide the Deathwatch with exactly what it needs, exactly when it needs it. The gifts of the Omega Vault have been as diverse as they have been mysterious. In the past, the Vault has provided tomes of archaic lore, as offering knowledge about alien species and their weaknesses that the Deathwatch could not have obtained through any other means. It has produced strange fragments of alien devices, the purpose and function of which sometimes took years to decipher. It has yielded ancient weapons forged in times long gone, world-slaying virus canisters sealed and preserved across the millennia, enigmatic star charts marking locations that no Imperial navigator had ever charted, and bizarre xenological specimens that defied the understanding of even the most experienced Ordo Xenos scholars. On one particularly remarkable occasion, the Vault's gift was an ancient astropath held in a stasis field. When the stasis field was deactivated and the astropath was awakened, this ancient, impossibly old servant of the Emperor sent one brief astropathic message to an unknown destination, spoke 2 words that no one present could understand, and then expired from extreme old age, his final duty discharged after millennia of patient waiting. What message he sent, and to whom, remains one of the Omega Vault's countless unsolved mysteries. Another time, in 274 of the 38th millennium, the vault opened and offered up a data crystal of impossibly archaic pattern that only the most ancient of the Deathwatch's systems could read. On the crystal, there was only a set of astrographic coordinates. Once examined, the coordinates were determined to represent nothing more than a tract of interstellar void, spinward of a remote Imperial world. An investigation vessel was dispatched and remained on station for 10 days before returning. But an instant before the vessel plunged into the warp, the ship's astropath suffered a terminal seizure, his last words a shrieked warning that mankind must never set foot in that reach of space again. What he sensed there, what horror lurked in that apparently empty stretch of void, no one knows. In the year 715 of the 41st millennium, 2 inquisitors arrived at Watch Fortress Erioch unannounced, one named Camilla Noesis and the other claiming only the name Caleb. They refused to explain how they knew of Erioch's location or why they were there, their only reply being that the time was as it should be. A chamber opened in the Omega Vault, revealing a chronograph from the dark age of technology that was meticulously marking a countdown measuring the hours and their division with total precision. But the Watch Fortress's Chamber of Vigilance met for 13 days to discuss the implications. The Inquisitors took all records of the discussion with them when they left. What the chronograph was counting down to, and whether the appointed hour has since arrived, remains unknown. At the center of the Omega Vault lies another, inner vault, a secret of secrets, bound with scores of locking mechanisms which have slowly opened themselves, one by one, down the centuries. The Chamber of Vigilance believes that sealed within this innermost chamber is the final truth, and perhaps the last weapon the Deathwatch will have need for in the Jericho Reach. Whether this belief is justified, and what form that final truth might take, is a question that has occupied some of the finest minds in the Imperium for millennia. What plan or pattern, or ordained in the ancient past, necessitated the construction of the Omega Vault? What hands built it? What intelligence possessed the foresight, or the precognitive ability, to fill it with resources that would be relevant to events occurring thousands of years in the future? These questions have no answers, or at least no answers that anyone still living is able to provide. What is certain, confirmed by multiple analyses, is that the creators of the Omega Vault were human. This is evident not only from elements of its design and the high Gothic inscriptions upon its doors, but from a further significant detail. Contained within the vault's air is an appallingly powerful synthetic pathogen that is entirely inert outside the Omega Vault's walls. This pathogen is an ancient and unreplicable weapon, utterly lethal to all kinds of life save one, mankind. The vault was built by humans, for humans, and it was designed to ensure that only humans would ever benefit from its contents. Every new battle brother stationed at Watch Fortress Eriok is brought before the great doors of the Omega Vault to take his oath of vigil. Standing before those massive sealed gates, reading those 5 ancient words carved above them, each warrior must confront the full weight of the Deathwatch's mission and the profound mystery at its heart. The last fortress is truth, and the truth, whatever it may be, waits patiently behind doors that no living hand can open, in a vault that has its own purposes and its own timeline, dispensing its gifts and its warnings according to a plan that was laid down so long ago that even the memory of its creators has been lost to the darkness of time. The Black Shields, warriors without a name. There is, within the ranks of the Deathwatch, a category of warrior that stands apart from all others. They are figures of mystery, and in some cases, of suspicion. Warriors who have voluntarily severed all ties with their former chapters and obscured their heraldry, presenting themselves to the Deathwatch as soldiers without a past, without a name, without a brotherhood to call their own. They are called the Black Shields, and their story is one of the most compelling and most heartbreaking in all of the Deathwatch's long history. When a Space Marine joins the Deathwatch through the normal process of secondment, he retains his chapter identity. He wears his chapter's symbol on one shoulder pad, a constant reminder of where he came from and where he will return when his service is complete. His name, his rank, his record of service, all of these are known and documented. He is a visitor in the Deathwatch, a guest who will eventually go home. A Black Shield has no home to return to. The reasons why a Space Marine might become a Black Shield are as varied as the chapters of the Adeptus Astartes themselves. Some join because their chapter has been destroyed, its world burned, its brothers killed, and the lone survivor has no one left to return to. For these warriors, the Deathwatch offers a new purpose, a new brotherhood, a chance to continue serving the Emperor, even when everything else has been taken from them. Others come from a darker place. These are warriors whose chapters have turned traitor, whose brothers have fallen to the corruption of chaos and betrayed everything they once stood for. The Black Shield has chosen to walk away from his fallen brethren, to sever every connection to the chapter that bore him, and to dedicate what remains of his life to the service of the Deathwatch as an act of atonement for sins that he did not commit but cannot escape being associated with. Still others arrive at the gates of a watch fortress, bearing the weight of personal failure, a chapter relic lost, a battle brother killed through a momentary lapse of judgment, a command decision that went catastrophically wrong. Their chapters may still exist, may still flourish, but the Black Shield has decided that he is no longer worthy of bearing its name. Some of the sternest chapters in the Imperium even use this permanent exile as a form of punishment, banishing brothers who cannot atone for their misdeeds in any other way. By tradition, when a warrior presents himself to a watch commander and petitions for admittance as a Black Shield, he is not questioned about his origins. Whatever passes between the watch commander and the supplicant is kept forever secret. The Black Shield reveals only his name, often a new one, chosen to mark his rebirth, and his basic skills. Everything else, his chapter, his lineage, his history, the specific circumstances that brought him to the Deathwatch's door, all of it is sealed away, never to be spoken of again. In place of his chapter's heraldry, the Black Shield's right shoulder pad is left blank, as painted the same featureless black as the rest of his armor. Where other Deathwatch Marines carry the symbol of their chapter as a mark of honor and identity, the Black Shield carries nothing. He is a warrior defined by absence, by the deliberate removal of everything that once made him who he was. Among their fellows, Black Shields are often regarded with a mixture of respect and unease. The other members of a kill team know that a Black Shield is, by definition, a warrior who has experienced something terrible enough to drive him to abandon his own brotherhood. They know that behind that blank shoulder pad lies a story that they will never hear, a wound that they can never help to heal. Some view the Black Shields with suspicion, worrying about what dark secrets might lurk behind their silence. Others view them with compassion, recognizing the courage it takes to walk away from everything you have ever known and start again from nothing. On the battlefield, Black Shields tend to fight with a ferocity and a disregard for personal safety that sets them apart even from the other already exceptional warriors of the Deathwatch. They are noted for being reckless, yet self-sacrificing, throwing themselves into danger without hesitation, never flinching from the most hazardous assignments, always willing to put themselves between their kill team and whatever threat they face. Many Black Shields fight as though they are already dead, as though their lives ended on the day they stripped their chapter's colors from their armor, and everything that comes after is simply a prolonged exercise in finding a worthy death. But not all Black Shields seek oblivion. Some, at the rarest and most remarkable, manage to forge new identities for themselves within the Deathwatch, rising through the ranks on the strength of their abilities and their dedication. Black Shield chaplains, watch captains, and even watch masters are not unknown, warriors who have taken the pain and loss that drove them to the Deathwatch in the first place and transformed it into something constructive, something lasting, something that benefits the entire organization. Perhaps the most famous Black Shield in recent history is the warrior known as Nullus, who served at Watch Fortress Watcher Keep during the era Indomitus. This warrior's true identity, known only to a handful of individuals within the highest echelons of the Imperium's leadership, was Demetrian Titus, formerly a captain of the Ultramarines chapter. Titus's story is a long and painful one. Following a heroic campaign on the Forge world of Graia, where he played a pivotal role in defeating both an orc invasion and a demonic incursion, Titus was accused of chaos corruption by his own battle brother, a young marine named Leandros, who reported his suspicions directly to the Inquisition, rather than through the chapter's own chain of command. Titus was taken into the custody of an inquisitor named Thrax, a paranoid and obsessive man who kept Titus imprisoned in a stasis cell for years, subjecting him to endless tests and interrogations in a futile attempt to prove what was not true. When Thrax eventually fell to the very chaos corruption he had accused Titus of harboring, and was slain by the Grey Knights, Titus was freed and cleared of all charges. But by then, the damage was done. Yet, having received no word from the Ultramarines during his long imprisonment, Titus had come to believe that his chapter had abandoned him, that they considered him too tainted to serve alongside them ever again. In truth, the Ultramarines had been searching for him, but Thrax had deliberately intercepted and destroyed their communications, ensuring that Titus remained isolated and alone. Consumed by grief and shame, Titus stripped the colors of the Ultramarines from his armor and volunteered to serve in the Deathwatch as a black shield, taking the name Nullus, a Latin word meaning no one. As Nullus, he served with quiet distinction for many years, fighting the Imperium's alien enemies with the same courage and determination that had defined his career as an Ultramarine, but without any of the recognition or honor that should have been his due. It was during the Fourth Tyrannic War, on the jungle world of Kadaku in the Residius system, that fate finally intervened. Nullus and his kill team Kassarin, deployed via Corvus Blackstar to reinforce Imperial forces under assault by Tyrannid swarms. The mission was desperate from the start, the kill team's gunship brought down by swarming flocks of winged bioforms, forcing the warriors to engage on the planet's surface under conditions of overwhelming numerical disadvantage. Titus was gravely wounded by a monstrous Tyrannid carnifex, sustaining injuries so severe that his death seemed certain. But as he lay broken on the battlefield, an Ultramarine strike force arrived in the system, led by none other than Chief Librarian Varro Tigurius, one of the most powerful psychers in the Imperium. Tigurius had sensed Titus's soul across the void, had recognized the psychic signature of a brother he had believed lost, and had ordered the strike cruiser Righteous Fury to make all speed to Kadaku. The Ultramarines arrived too late to save the world from the Tyrannids, but they succeeded in evacuating the surviving Deathwatch warriors, including the shattered form of the Black Shield named Nullus. Aboard the Righteous Fury, Titus was given the only treatment that could save his life: the Calgarian Rites, the Ultramarines' name for the Rubicon Primaris procedure, the dangerous surgical process that transforms a firstborn Space Marine into a Primaris Marine. Titus survived. He was welcomed back into the Ultramarines with the honor and respect he had always deserved, and his innocence confirmed and his service acknowledged. But the years he spent as a Black Shield in the Deathwatch had left their mark on him, just as they leave their mark on every warrior who walks that lonely path. Titus's story is exceptional, both in its details and in its relatively happy resolution. Most Black Shields do not get to go home. Most die in the service of the Deathwatch, their true names and their true stories known only to themselves and to the Watch commanders who accepted their petitions. They are buried with honor in the tombs of the great Watch fortresses, their blank shoulder pads mute testimony to lives lived in service and sacrifice, their secrets carried with them into whatever awaits beyond the veil of death. But in death, at least, the Black Shield can reforge the bonds of brotherhood that he once chose to sever. For the Deathwatch is a brotherhood that transcends individual chapters, a family that accepts all who are willing to dedicate themselves to the long vigil, regardless of where they came from or what brought them to its door. In the Deathwatch, even the nameless and the forgotten can find a place, a purpose, and a peace that might otherwise have been denied them. The era, Indomitus, the Great Rift, and beyond the galaxy was ripped in half. There is no gentler way to describe what happened when the Great Rift, that immense warp storm that stretches from the Eye of Terror to the galactic east, tore its way into existence in the closing days of the 41st millennium. The barrier between the material universe and the hellish dimension of the Imperium was breached on a scale never before seen in human history, and the consequences were catastrophic. Worlds that had been safe for millennia were suddenly engulfed in storms of psychic energy. Entire subsectors were cut off from the light of the Astronomicon, the psychic beacon that allows Imperial ships to navigate the warp, plunging them into darkness and isolation. Demonic incursions erupted across the length and breadth of the Imperium, and the forces of chaos, emboldened by the success of Abaddon the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade and the destruction of the fortress world of Cadia, launched offensives on 100 fronts simultaneously. But for the Deathwatch, the Great Rift brought a different kind of catastrophe. Yet the birth of the Rift did not merely empower the forces of chaos, it also displaced vast numbers of alien species, driving them from their homes and pushing them into Imperial space like an enormous tide of dispossessed and desperate creatures. Species that had been content to remain in their own territories for centuries were suddenly on the move, fleeing the warp storms that had consumed their worlds and crashing into Imperial space with the desperation of refugees and the fury of conquerors. In some places, the Great Rift cut watch fortresses off from any support, leaving them isolated and alone in the face of mounting alien threats. In others, furious warp storms drove desperate Xenos migrations before them, leaving the Deathwatch embattled against waves of displaced enemies that had nothing left to lose. But the thin line of defense that the Deathwatch maintained against the alien had always been stretched tight. Now, in the era Indomitus, it was in danger of snapping entirely. It was the resurrected Primarch Robuta Guilliman, returned to the Imperium after 10,000 years of stasis sleep, and now serving as the Lord Commander of the Imperium and Imperial Regent, who recognized the danger and took action to address it. Guilliman had always understood the importance of the Deathwatch's mission, and he could see that the organization was on the brink of collapse, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the alien threats that the Great Rift had unleashed. His response was the Ultimaris Decree, a proclamation that would fundamentally reshape the Deathwatch for the new era. The decree provided for the distribution of Primaris Space Marines, the new generation of enhanced warriors created by Archmagos Dominus Belisarius Call during Guilliman's long sleep, directly to the Deathwatch's watch fortresses across the Imperium. Furthermore, the decree bound every newly founded Primaris-only chapter created during the Ultima founding to provide Primaris Marines for the Deathwatch in perpetuity, ensuring a continuous flow of fresh reinforcements for the foreseeable future. In total, thousands of Primaris Space Marines were distributed to the Deathwatch's Watchmasters. Nearly all of them accepted the new warriors without question, so dire were their circumstances. The Primaris Marines brought with them not only their enhanced physiology, which made them larger, faster, and more resilient than their firstborn predecessors, but also new technologies and vehicles that expanded the Deathwatch's tactical options significantly. The arrival of the Primaris Marines was not entirely smooth. Some watch captains, veterans of centuries of service who had spent their entire careers fighting alongside firstborn Marines, were skeptical of the newcomers. Watch Captain Holgyar Ironfang of One Watch Fortress received his Primaris reinforcements in the form of Fortis kill team Pharanos, and was so distrustful of the untested Battle Brothers that he inflicted a series of menial duties upon them while reserving the more glorious missions for his established Venator and Purgatus kill teams. But the Primaris Marines proved themselves quickly. On the world of Katok, several kill teams from the Watch Fortress of Holtmote found themselves caught between forces of the Necrons and the traitorous heretic Astartes of the Emperor's Children, facing certain destruction. The battle turned back in their favor when a mighty force of Primaris Space Marines, freshly armored in the black of the Deathwatch, arrived directly from the Indomitus Crusade to join the fight. The sight of these towering warriors, clad in the iconic black and silver of the Deathwatch, and wielding weapons that the Watch Fortress's veterans had never seen before, was enough to break the enemy's momentum and turn defeat into victory. The integration of Primaris Marines into the Deathwatch's existing organizational structure required some adaptation. New kill team configurations had to be developed to take advantage of the Primaris Marines' unique capabilities, particularly their use of Mark X Tacticus and Gravis power armor. The Fortis kill team, built around a core of intercessors and incorporating close support elements drawn from the various Primaris specializations, became the standard Primaris equivalent formation. But Watchmasters across the Imperium continued to experiment with new combinations and tactics as the full extent of the Primaris Marines' potential became clear. One of the most significant tactical innovations to emerge from the integration of Primaris Marines was the widespread deployment of Hellblasters as a mobile fire support element within mixed kill teams. The watch fortresses of Doombreak, Furor Shield, and Indomitus Point pioneered the use of small squads of Hellblasters, laced in amongst more varied kill teams, functioning essentially as lighter, more maneuverable Devastator squads capable of dealing with the hulking, monstrous creatures fielded by the Tyranids and the Orcs. The era Indomitus has also seen the Deathwatch engaged in some of the most intense and varied campaigns in its long history. In the Damocles Gulf, an insane, many-faceted war sprawled through the eastern fringe as forces of Tsentchian demons, Tyranids, Tau, and the Imperium clashed in a chaotic free-for-all. The kill teams of the Eye of Damocles Watch Fortress reaped a tremendous tally from the Xenos forces, and combining spearhead strikes from Primaris Inceptor squads with gunship-mounted Purgatus kill teams to eliminate alien command structures and leave their forces floundering without leadership. On the bastion worlds of Neo-Tharsis, the swarms of a splinter fleet of Hive Fleet behemoth overran Imperial defenses, and Watcher Keep sent its watch companies to end the threat. Going into battle against the vast terrors of the court of the Nephilim King, Malleus and Purgatus kill teams found unexpected allies in lances of Imperial knights from House Griffith. The two forces melded their expertise in monster hunting, laying low entire broods of Carnifexes, Tyrannofexes, and even Biotitans, blunting the Tyranid advance long enough for fresh Imperial forces to arrive and stabilize the front. And across the Chalnath expanse, the forces of Mortgard Watch Fortress engaged in a complex four-sided conflict against the Toe Empire, Genestealer cults, and other threats that had emerged in the wake of the Great Rift's disruption. Watchmaster Agathon directed his forces with the precision and adaptability that the Deathwatch is known for, countering each new threat as it arose and maintaining the Imperium's grip on the region, despite being outnumbered and outmaneuvered on multiple fronts. The era Indomitus has been the most challenging period in the Deathwatch's history since its founding during the War of the Beast. The scale of the alien threats facing the Imperium has never been greater. The resources available to counter those threats have never been more stretched, and the strategic situation has never been more complex. But the Deathwatch endures, as it has always endured, adapting to new challenges, embracing new technologies, and maintaining its vigil against the darkness that presses in on all sides. With every standard year, more requests are leveled upon the wider Adeptus Astartes by the Deathwatch, citing ancient oaths to claim tithe after tithe of warriors. Yet the astropathic messages flow both ways. Hundreds of chapters are formally requesting their battle brothers be discharged from their long vigils and sent back, despite the tarnishing of their honor that this entails. In this time of woe, every Space Marine is vital in the war against the dark powers that seek to destroy reality itself. One creative solution to this tension came from Furor Shield Watch Fortress, which responded to 20 Space Marine chapters' requests to return their battle brothers by sending them back still clad in the black of the Deathwatch and still technically serving their long vigil. This act of compromise allowed the returned battle brothers to fight alongside their chapters once more, but in the capacity of strategic anti-Xenos advisors without equal, spreading the Deathwatch's knowledge and expertise throughout the wider Adeptus Astartes, rather than hoarding it within the watch fortresses. Whether humanity will survive to see a new age is unknown, but the Deathwatch is fighting with every ounce of its strength to ensure it. The Fourth Tyrannic War deserves particular attention in any discussion of the Deathwatch's current operations, for it represents perhaps the most severe test the organization has faced since its founding. The Tyranids, those nightmarish extragalactic predators whose hive fleets have been encroaching on the galaxy for centuries, launched a massive new offensive into the Segmentum Pacificus, striking at the Imperium's western boundaries with a fury and coordination that surpassed anything previously recorded. The Deathwatch was on the front lines from the very beginning. Watchmaster Vadrian Chanol of Watcher Keep authorized his watch company Primus to join forces with Deathwatch elements from Fort Obsidus, deploying into multiple star systems across the Segmentum Pacificus to combat the advancing Tyranid swarms. The battles that followed were some of the most intense the Deathwatch had fought in living memory. The Tyranids are, in many ways, the perfect opponent for the Deathwatch's tactical philosophy. Unlike orcs, who can be provoked into reckless charges that expose them to devastating ambushes, or Necrons, whose rigid hierarchical structure can be disrupted by eliminating key command nodes, the Tyranids are an adaptable, evolving threat that requires constant innovation to combat. Each encounter teaches the hive mind something new about its opponent's tactics and capabilities, and each subsequent encounter sees the Tyranids adapt to counter whatever worked against them before. This means that the Deathwatch cannot simply develop a single anti-Tyranid tactical doctrine and apply it indefinitely. They must constantly analyze their enemy's evolving capabilities, develop new countermeasures, test those countermeasures in the field, and then adapt again when the Tyranids inevitably find a way around them. It is a relentless cycle of innovation and counter-innovation that demands exactly the kind of flexible, creative thinking that the Deathwatch's multi-chapter composition makes possible. The Hellfire rounds that were devastating against one generation of Tyranid bioforms may prove less effective against the next. The kill zone formations that annihilated one swarm may fail against a swarm that has evolved longer-range bioweapons or faster assault organisms. The psychological operations that disrupted one tendril of the hive fleet may be countered by a synaptic web that the hive mind has strengthened in response to previous disruptions. Against such an enemy, the Deathwatch's greatest asset is not any single weapon or tactic, but the collective knowledge base that its warriors bring from their diverse chapter backgrounds. A warrior who has fought Tyranids as part of the Ultramarines, drawing on the extensive body of knowledge accumulated during the Battle of Macragge and the long centuries of war against Hive Fleet Behemoth, brings different insights than a warrior who has fought them as part of the Scythes of the Emperor, who have experienced the devastating loss of their homeworld to Hive Fleet Kraken. A Blood Angel who has faced the Tyranids during the devastation of Baal brings yet another perspective, one shaped by the desperate last-ditch defense of a world that came within a hair's breadth of being consumed entirely. When all of these perspectives are combined in a single kill team, the result is a force that can analyze and respond to Tyranid adaptations faster than any single chapter could manage alone. This is why the Deathwatch has been so effective against the Tyranids, and why the Ordo Xenos considers the Deathwatch's anti-Tyranid expertise to be one of the most valuable intelligence assets in the entire Imperium. The relationship between the Deathwatch and the Tyranid threat goes deeper than mere military opposition. The Deathwatch's watch fortresses maintain extensive archives of Tyranid biological data, combat reports, and tactical analyses that represent the Imperium's single, most comprehensive body of knowledge about the extragalactic predators. This information is constantly updated as new encounters occur and new Tyranid adaptations are observed, thus creating a living database of xenological intelligence that is shared across the entire Deathwatch network. The Fourth Tyrannic War tested this intelligence network as never before, as Tyranid hive fleets struck simultaneously across a broader front than had ever been previously recorded. Kill teams found themselves facing Tyranid bioforms that had not been catalogued in any existing database, creatures that had been evolved in response to threats encountered in entirely different sectors of the galaxy. The Deathwatch's ability to rapidly analyze these new threats, develop countermeasures, and disseminate that information to other kill teams operating hundreds of light years away was crucial to preventing the Tyranid advance from overwhelming the Imperium's western defenses entirely. It was during this period of intense conflict that Kill Team Kassarin, including the Black Shield known as Nullus, deployed to the Residius system via Corvus Blackstar. Their mission was to fire a virus bomb into the stratosphere using a local orbital launcher, targeting the main body of the Tyranid swarm in the hopes of killing enough bioforms before they could adapt to the pathogen to give the beleaguered Astra Militarum a chance at eradicating the rest. It was a desperate gambit the kind of high-risk, high-reward operation that the Deathwatch specializes in, and the kind of operation that no conventional military force could have attempted. The kill team's Corvus Blackstar was brought down by swarming flocks of winged bioforms, of forcing the warriors to fight their way to the objective on foot through a nightmare landscape of alien predators. It was during this desperate ground advance that Titus, the warrior known as Nulus, was gravely wounded, setting in motion the chain of events that would eventually lead to his reunion with the Ultramarines and his transformation into a Primaris Marine. The Fourth Tyrannic War is far from over. New Hive fleet tendrils continue to push into Imperial space, and the Deathwatch continues to be at the forefront of the defense. But the war has already demonstrated something that the Deathwatch's founders understood nearly 9,000 years ago: that the alien threat is not a problem that can be solved once and for all through a single decisive battle, but an ongoing challenge that requires constant vigilance, a constant adaptation, and constant sacrifice. The long vigil continues, and it will continue for as long as there are aliens in the galaxy that threaten the survival of humanity. Notable figures and famous campaigns. The Deathwatch's long history is filled with heroes whose deeds have shaped the destiny of the Imperium, even if most of those deeds remain hidden from the wider galaxy behind the veil of secrecy that shrouds all Deathwatch operations. While we have already discussed figures like Corland, Asger Warfist, and Demetrian Titus, the annals of the Deathwatch contain many more names that deserve to be remembered. Watch Captain Artemis of the Mortifactors chapter is perhaps the most celebrated active member of the Deathwatch. Originally recruited from the feral world of Posul, a night world shrouded in almost perpetual darkness, Artemis was recognized by the Ordo Xenos for his exceptional talent in the art of Xenos slaying. He accepted the call to the Deathwatch and served first under Inquisitor Severnius against Genestealer cults on the missionary world of St. Capelline, where the prompt action of the kill team undoubtedly saved the world from falling under the domination of a Tyranid-influenced cult. For 2 decades, Artemis fought alongside Inquisitor Severnius, rooting out alien corruption wherever it could be found. On Varnix Prime, he thwarted a Hrud attempt to capture an Adeptus Mechanicus base. On the world of Taranhorst, he and Severnius discovered an infestation of warp entities called Enslavers that had psychically enslaved entire populations. When Severnius was killed during the operation, command of the kill team passed to Artemis, who made the difficult decision to order the planet bombarded with cyclonic torpedoes from orbit, the only certain way to ensure that the enslavers were destroyed. Artemis went on to trigger the civil war that destroyed an enormous greenskin gathering known as Thrashfang's forces, burned to ash a Tau orbital city, beheaded the Big Mech Worldstomper atop his own Gargant, and battled the infamous craft world Aeldari Farsia, Eldrad Ulthran, on the crystal moon of Coheria during the Battle of Port Demesnus. So aggressive were his actions in that campaign that he was censured upon his return. But Artemis remained adamant that he had done only what was necessary to honor the Emperor. Artemis is something of a purist when it comes to the alien question. He refuses absolutely to countenance any alliance with Xenos, is even a partnership of simple convenience against a common foe. In his view, every alien is a threat to humanity, and every alien must be destroyed, regardless of the circumstances. This uncompromising stance has made him a controversial figure within the Deathwatch, where some watch captains advocate a more pragmatic approach to alien species that are not actively hostile to the Imperium. But Artemis's results speak for themselves, and his name is revered throughout the organization as that of a warrior who embodies the Deathwatch's founding purpose in its purest form. The campaigns of the Deathwatch span the entire length and breadth of the Imperium's history, and many of them have had consequences that reach far beyond the immediate battlefield. During the early decades of the Deathwatch's existence, the methods developed by Squad Viridium for combating the remnants of the Beast's greenskin armies were so effective that they were codified as the foundation of what became known as Furor tactics. These techniques, which involved the delivery of concentrated explosive firepower against densely packed enemy formations, proved applicable to virtually every Horde-type alien threat the Deathwatch would face over the subsequent millennia, from orc mobs to tyrannid swarms to Necron phalanxes. The Vault of Azagorod campaign saw the Deathwatch take on one of the most terrifying threats in the galaxy, a C'tan shard, a fragment of the ancient star gods who once ruled the galaxy before being shattered by the Necrons. The psychic shadow of suffering produced by this entity's actions was so dark that it was detected by long-range astropathic reverb choirs across an entire sector. The Deathwatch forces sent to investigate found the Gulga system rife with undeath, both mechanical and biological. After many months of warfare involving forces from 3 watch fortresses, the C'tan Shard's vault was finally destroyed by a sustained bombardment from massed land raiders and Corvus Blackstar wings. It was a campaign that demonstrated the Deathwatch's ability to coordinate large-scale operations across vast distances, while still maintaining the surgical precision that is the organization's hallmark. On the island world of Tharsis Prime, a lacrimold shapeshifter posing as the paranoid planetary governor Ecos Blail was finally put down by the Deathwatch after a grueling war with the mercenary Kroot tribes the shapeshifter had hired to protect itself. This campaign highlighted the Deathwatch's role not merely as alien killers, but as investigators and counterintelligence operatives, capable of unraveling the most complex alien infiltration schemes and eliminating threats that conventional military forces could not even identify, let alone engage. The Deathwatch has also played a critical role in dealing with threats from the Necrons, those ancient machine beings who ruled the galaxy 60 million years before humanity existed, and are now awakening from their tomb worlds in ever greater numbers. Os Watch Fortress Fort Velocia was overrun by legions of Necrons led by the overlord Janitar, a disaster that demonstrated the terrifying power of the Necron war machine when brought to bear in full force. The loss of Fort Velocia was a sobering reminder that even the Deathwatch, for all its skill and dedication, cannot always prevail against the horrors that lurk in the darkness between the stars. But for every defeat, there are 100 victories, most of them unknown to the wider Imperium, most of them unrecorded in any archive outside the sealed vaults of the Watch Fortresses. Kill teams that eliminated alien infiltrators before they could complete their missions. Kill teams that destroyed alien weapons caches before they could be used against Imperial forces. Kill teams that captured alien specimens for study, be it recovered alien technology for analysis, or gathered intelligence that allowed the Imperium to prepare for threats that had not yet materialized. These quiet, unglamorous, often deeply dangerous operations are the true heart of the Deathwatch's work, the countless small battles that, taken together, have kept humanity alive for nearly 9,000 years. The Deathwatch has also developed a grim expertise in one of the most controversial and devastating tools available to the Imperium, Exterminatus. When a world has been so thoroughly overrun by alien infestation that no conventional military operation can reclaim it, when the population has been corrupted beyond redemption, or the alien presence has grown so deeply rooted that it cannot be excised without destroying the planet itself, the Deathwatch has the authority and the means to enact the ultimate sanction. Their fleet includes dedicated kill ships, specialized bombardment vessels designed specifically to deliver world-killing payloads, whether virus bombs that consume all organic matter on a planet's surface, cyclonic torpedoes that crack a world's crust and reduce it to molten slag, or more exotic weapons whose effects are classified at the highest levels of inquisitorial secrecy. The decision to enact Exterminatus is never taken lightly. It represents the ultimate failure of the Deathwatch's mission, the acknowledgement that a world has been lost, and that the only remaining option is to deny it to the enemy at the cost of everything and everyone upon it. But the Deathwatch's warriors understand that sometimes the calculus of survival demands terrible sacrifices, that the loss of one world is preferable to the spread of an alien contagion that could consume an entire sector if left unchecked. There are also missions that the Deathwatch undertakes that go beyond even the extraordinary scope of alien hunting. Kill teams may be tasked with killing a rogue inquisitor, one of the Ordo Xenos' own, who has gone too far in their pursuit of Xenos knowledge and has become a threat to the Imperium rather than its protector. Such notions are so forbidden and the treachery kept such a secret that even other Deathwatch members do not know of these missions. All involved in such operations are sworn to even stricter oaths of secrecy than those that already bind the Deathwatch, creating layers of silence within an organization that is already defined by its silence. The Deathwatch's operations against Genestealer cults deserve particular mention, for they represent perhaps the most insidious and difficult type of alien threat the Deathwatch faces. Genestealer cults are alien infiltration organisms, parasitic entities that spread their genetic corruption through the population of an imperial world over generations, slowly building a network of alien-human hybrids who look human, act human, and believe themselves to be human, but who serve the psychic call of the alien hive mind that lurks beneath their consciousness. By the time a Genestealer cult is detected, it may have infiltrated every level of a planet's society, from its slums to its governing councils, from its military to its clergy. Against such a threat, a conventional military response is worse than useless. You cannot send a regiment of Imperial Guard to fight an enemy that looks identical to the population they are supposed to protect. You cannot use orbital bombardment against a threat that is dispersed throughout every corner of a city's infrastructure. What you need are specialists who can identify the signs of alien corruption, trace the cult's network of influence, locate its leadership, and eliminate it with surgical precision before it can call in the Tyrannid hive fleet that will consume the world whole. This is exactly the kind of mission that the Deathwatch was created for, and it is exactly the kind of mission that has made the Deathwatch indispensable to the survival of the Imperium. The story of the Deathwatch is not merely a story of warriors and weapons, of battles won and enemies destroyed. It is a story about the nature of sacrifice, about what it means to give up everything you are in service to something greater than yourself. Every Deathwatch Marine who paints his armor black makes a choice that few others in the Imperium are ever asked to make. He chooses to leave behind the brotherhood that has defined his entire existence, to enter a world of secrets and shadows, to fight enemies that most of the Imperium does not even know exist, and to do it all without recognition, without glory, without the comfort of his chapter's traditions, or the companionship of his lifelong brothers. It is a choice that demands the highest qualities of the human spirit, qualities that should not be possible in beings who are, in many ways, more machine than man, more weapon than person. And yet the warriors of the Deathwatch make that choice. A generation after generation, millennium after millennium, because they understand something that the rest of the Imperium sometimes forgets. That the alien is not merely an enemy to be fought, but a threat to be understood. And that understanding the alien, truly understanding what makes it dangerous and how it can be stopped, is the only reliable path to humanity's survival. The eternal vigil, and so we come to the end of our story, though for the Deathwatch, there are no endings, only the endless turning of the wheel of war. In the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war and the laughter of thirsting gods, the warriors of the Deathwatch stand sentinel against the alien horrors that press in upon humanity from every direction. They are the shield that slays, the watchmen of the void, as the first and sometimes last line of defense against threats that would overwhelm the Imperium if they were ever allowed to advance unchecked. They are space marines who have set aside their chapter identities, their personal ambitions, and sometimes even their names, in service to a cause greater than any individual brotherhood. They are warriors who fight not for glory or honor, but for the simple, brutal necessity of survival. They are the Deathwatch, and their vigil will not end until the last alien threat has been eliminated or the last human world has fallen. The Deathwatch stands guard at the borders of the Imperium, watching the darkness between the stars, with eyes that never close and weapons that never rest. from their watch fortresses and watch stations, scattered like lonely sentinels across the vast emptiness of the galaxy. Them they observe, they analyze, they prepare, and when the time comes, they strike with a speed and ferocity that no alien can match. They are the Emperor's gift to a galaxy that does not know they exist. They are the silent guardians, the unseen protectors, the warriors in black who stand between humanity and the abyss. And as long as there are aliens in the galaxy, as long as the darkness between the stars harbors threats that must be met and destroyed, the Deathwatch will be there, watching, waiting, ready. The long vigil continues, and it will continue for as long as there are warriors willing to paint their armor black, swear the apocryphal oath, and stand watch against the doom that waits in the darkness. For in the end, that is what the Deathwatch is. Not a chapter, not an army, not even an organization, in the conventional sense. As the Deathwatch is a promise made nearly 9,000 years ago by warriors who looked into the face of the alien and refused to flinch. A promise that humanity will not go quietly into the night. A promise that for every alien horror that threatens the Imperium, there will be a warrior in black ready to meet it. A promise that the watch will never end. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the lore of the Deathwatch, please do consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel. It really does help more than you might think, and it lets me know that you want to see more content like this. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. And if you have thoughts, questions, or topics you would like to see covered in a future video, drop a comment below. I read every single one. And your feedback genuinely shapes the direction of this channel. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant, and remember, the Emperor protects, but the Deathwatch ensures it.
I hope you guys enjoyed the story. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, share button, whatever you want. Give me some feedback if there's any. And yeah, sleep well.